The church doesn't close in the summer, but our schedule changes, our rhythms change, and best of all, we take a breather. I go on vacation for July. Hopefully we all get outdoors more. Hopefully in beautiful days like this one, like this whole week. The ocean beckons. The cities beckon our exploration. Cultural events call us forth to be inspired by music, art, dance, theater, food events, heritage days. We embrace a Sabbath spirit, a reminder that when we are not doing, God is doing. And according to the most ancient monotheistic tradition in the Western world, God commands that we rest. It's not an option, it's not a maybe, it's a thou shalt. The church in 2022 America has to make a concerted effort to be Sabbath aware, let alone Sabbath compliant. All of us live in a world soaked by productivity equals value worldview, and it requires determined practices of peace and self and other acceptance and compassion to divest from that mentality. You're not valued according to what you accomplish, do, or earn. Neither is the church. So yes, I report metrics to the board, and they must keep their leadership attention on finances, assets, program goals. But we all know that the church is not a program, it is really a network of relationships intended to create community, to respond with open hearts to the crisis of being alive, and to help us all cultivate reverence for creation. And for this little span of time, we get to experience it. This Tuesday marks the 25th anniversary of my ordination to the Unitarian Universalist ministry. And in our movement, 25 and 50 gets a big hoopla at the General Assembly. In 1997, during the Clinton presidency, my brand new commitment to spending my life as a leader among leaders in spiritual community was as yet untested by domestic and foreign terrorism. We had yet to experience 9/11. Mass shootings were shocking enough to shut everything down as the nation shared outrage, horror, and the sense that something must and will be done about this. We were just beginning as a denomination to do anti-racism work. Most of us had no vocabulary yet for it, let alone a practice of personal reflection and confrontation of how we interact with white supremacy and benefit from it. We were, Unitarian Universalists, were ahead of the mainline church in fighting for gay liberation. And marriage equality was one of the first campaigns that I was involved with as an ordained minister in terms of social justice. I was very involved in reproductive rights issues down in Pennsylvania and Maryland, but never ever dreamed at that time that Roe v. Wade would be in danger of being overturned. Our big conversations back then in the UUA were really about theists versus humanists and pagans trying to get along in our congregations, and we did a lot of ink spilling. This was before the internet, really. It was just like on the verge. So we did all this like listserv conversation, and we were still creating paper newsletters and pamphlets at that time. We couldn't fight about it over Facebook because Facebook hadn't been invented yet. It was a very self-reflecting time, or maybe you could say navel-gazing, given the larger issues that we would be called to engage with. At that time, I don't remember anybody really talking about climate change that much, just a few folks on like the green sanctuary teams where I served, and people were reading Bill McKibben and sounding the alarm, and most people were ignoring that. And Joan Brown Campbell gave the Ware lecture that year on interfaith cooperation, because that was a hot topic. If I had a vision of 20 years hence, back in 1997, I would have hoped that it would look like a continued fulfillment of my dreams for individuals to be more awake and alive to the numinous, to the sacred. As I hoped also, and kind of assumed, that our society would continue to move in a direction that would support sanity. A society that supports sanity, wholeness, what would it look like? Well, how about guaranteed fair wages and that keep up with inflation? I never thought we'd have to fight so hard for a scrape by minimum wage. Childcare, programs for babies and children, universal health care, attention to and solutions to redress injustices suffered by historically oppressed and marginalized populations. We'd have a beautiful big public transportation infrastructure. And at that time, the big dig was going on. And now it's already really obsolete in terms of moving traffic through Boston. Sorry, it's wicked obsolete. Education and housing would cost a reasonable amount of money. Recycling would make a big difference. Corporations would become more accountable, not less. Who knew that they would be considered individuals and earn more protections under the law? And so on. You get my idea. You get where I'm going. In my heart of hearts, I saw myself as someone who was going to be thinking, lots of thinky time, writing, teaching, in a kind of gentle, relaxed way, with a very occasional difficult crisis or conflict to deal with, creating programs and worship services, and pastoring in a way that just enhanced and supported and felt like an organic part of what our modern society was doing, which itself would be developing in a more humane direction because, you know, Unitarianism, onward and upward forever and ever. That was the progressive vision. It always has been. And then society has moved, of course, subsequently in the opposite direction. And for that reason, our presence in society is more urgent and relevant than ever, even as all institutions have become more suspect and more fragile. When I was ordained, the church was fondly regarded as a nice place for those spiritual people or for those traditional people. And the UUs were known as a tiny denomination with a big mouth, which I hope we still are. We were always known as a tiny denomination that had a real influence because we were mouthy and engaged throughout history. We were affectionately known as the hippie church, which also doesn't offend me. And many were confused by the existence of a church, a religious group with very little Bible, occasional mention of Jesus, and open questioning of the entire concept of God. They still are. Today, our mission to create community, to encourage people to find a deeper relationship to the world around them than is promised by hyper-individualism and consumerism, can feel too simple, too, basic. But it's not. It's so desperately needed. It's what the church must continue to be because obviously, and dumb me for not realizing this, creating community, supporting ways of thinking and living that respect other living beings and the planet was much harder than any of us imagined in 1997. I took that for granted, that was sort of a common human goal. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I was too enchanted. And I've been disenchanted, but I'm going to become re-enchanted because of what we do together. That's part of what we do, a process of re-enchantment. All the dreadful political movements that have gained ascendancy since I was entrusted with the title Reverend by the UU Church of Medford have proven that it is not only difficult to create community based on reverence, compassion, and an ethos of sharing, respect for the inherent dignity and equal rights of diverse others, it is actually very appealing to do the opposite. And Jack's mentioning or lifting up of that news item this morning is a perfect example of that. To become part of a band of excluders, enforcers of violent ideologies. It's really hard, but it makes our goals obvious and clear. My annual report, and by the way, this annual report this year is beautiful. Please pick up a copy and read all these reports. And there's beautiful pictures. It's illustrated this year. Really, really lovely production. My annual report is full of thanks. And it can never include enough thanks. I'm grateful to all of you who added the light of your life to the flame of community, who shared your time, talent, and generosity of spirit. As I wrote in my report, the congregational engagement this year has been COVID diminished. And I hope we will continue to strengthen and see the return of yet more members and newcomers in coming months to continue to support, yes, our traditional Sunday morning program and offerings, but also our robust community programming and community building. I want to especially thank Clare Campbell for her leadership this year as president of the board during an extremely trying time, not just COVID and returning and so forth, but an unexpected development that came at the end of Eileen Cummings' tenure. The Board of Trustees and the Stanley School Task Force have conducted their deliberations and conversations with utmost conscientiousness. And they have spent a tremendous amount of time and heart addressing this unforeseen situation. The man behind the camera, Steve DeVoe, is retiring from his position after 8 years faithfully recording services and making it possible for us to have a wonderful archive for our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, Steve, for moving us more further.
Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to open the 2022 annual parish meeting. We've had quite a year. So let's get down to business. The 2022 annual meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lynn will now come to order. I'm Clare Campbell, parish president. Jim Olivetti, our parish clerk, will keep the minutes of the meeting. Now I would like to ask Jim to review the rules of procedure for today's meeting.
In compliance with our bylaws, I posted a notice of this meeting at least 7 days prior to the meeting, and the notice was also read from the pulpit. According to the bylaws, 15 members entitled to vote constitute a quorum. If you're a member of the church, can you please now raise your hand? A quorum is present, so we can begin our meeting.
It's nice to see so many members here raising their hands. So the first item of business today is to accept the 2022 annual report, which is available at the back of the sanctuary. It includes the minutes of the 2021 annual report. Can I have a motion to accept the 2022 annual report? So moved. Thank you. A second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? The annual report is accepted. Thank you. Please take some time to read it. There's messages from both of our ministers and from our church leaders. So the next item of business today is the election of trustees and officers for the coming church year. Jim will present the recommendations made by the governance committee for our slate for next year.
For president next year, the nominee is Mary Gatlin. Past president Clare Campbell has agreed to serve. Treasurer Rebecca Green, I will be the clerk again next year. And then trustees, Nikki Buscemi, Jack Butterworth, Loretta Connolly, Kathy Cubby, and Mark Shiloh.
Yay, what a great group. Are there any nominations from the floor? Kathy Cubby and Loretta Conley. So the ones rolling on this year will be Nikki, Jack, and Mark. Which trustees are continuing from last year? So we have 3 new members rolling on this year. Can I have a motion to elect the nominees? Thank you, Chris. Second? Thank you. Any discussion? We talked about it a lot this year. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. The nominees have been elected. So, yay. Yeah. So I want to take a few minutes to recognize and thanks some individuals. I have some members of the board that served this year present. Ruth, would you come up? Ruth is finishing her 3 years as a trustee on the board. It's been wonderful having Ruth on the board. She's so kind and so very thoughtful and intentional with her discussions. And I really enjoyed hearing you share during our openings your relationship with your brother and your sister-in-law. That was very meaningful to listen to. Thanks, Ruth. We're going to miss you. Mark Shiloh is also rolling off, but he's not with us today. He's home. I'm sorry. Thank you. Mark Vanderlinden is also rolling off, but he's home isolating, so we'll give a shout out to Mark for his service too. Mark brought a lot of thought and intention to our conversations and discussions this year. I want to thank Rebecca Green for serving as treasurer. That's a big lift, that particular position. The treasurer attends governance meetings, finance committee meetings, and board meetings, and is frequently coming in and out of the church to sign checks and to speak with Elizabeth about our finances. Thank you, Rebecca. And she's in the back. Do you want to stand up and just say, be recognized? Thank you. And I also wanted to thank Loretta Conley, who's not here, for ushering us through a ministerial eval. We moved from a 3-year ministerial eval to an annual ministerial eval so that we could have more time for conversations with Vicki, and Loretta ushered us through that process. Kathy and Ruth will be facilitating. Kathy Cubby, who's sitting in the back, will be facilitating our board eval. So in addition to a ministerial eval, the board does a self-eval every year as well. So they'll be facilitating that with us next Monday, which is our last meeting of the year. The board has 2 task forces to thank this year. We had the reopening task force. Actually, both of these task forces have worked a tremendous amount in the last few years. So our reopening task force, I believe the membership is Reverend Vicki, church administrator Elizabeth, Loretta Conley and Mary Gatlin. So they've been at it since COVID, yeah. You know, helping us to be safe and be present today. And our second task force is the Stanley School Task Force. Sarah Cecil, Doreen Hodgkin, and Mark Vanderlinden, and Sarah and Doreen are here with us today. And thank you both, and Mark, for all the work that you've done on behalf and the tremendous amount of meetings and conversations that you've had with people in our community and outside of our community. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like to open the floor for discussion. Did I forget? Chris is going to do it. Oh, okay. Chris, come on up. Oh, I forgot. We also thanked you, too, in the annual report, Chris. We're very happy to have you here with us.
You're welcome. I have, hopefully this is going to work, and then I don't need the mic here. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank folks who've helped out with programming this year. And, you know, it's been such a gift to join this community this year, and I've been so grateful. And I think we have a lot to celebrate coming, you know, dealing with COVID and doing so much together this year. So thinking about faith development programming for all ages, I just wanted to call up some people who have really just had a committed effort the whole year, and thank some other individuals, some of whom are here and some are not. So Mary Gatlin was our chair of the Faith Development Ministry team, and we thank her in spirit today. And our other four members, we've got, I think we've got two with us here today. If Nikki Buscemi, if you could come up, and Megan White, you're here, if you could come up. And then we're also thanking Gwen McKinney and Whiskey Walensky. I wanted to call up Susan Kelly, who has been our religious education teacher for 9 years, UUCGL. We'll thank Eileen Cummings, who in spirit today, who taught Al this year with Bruce Campbell. And Bruce, could you come up and join us, please? Recognizing the extraordinary commitment of teaching Al every single week. Folks may not know, because the program doesn't meet during Sunday morning. It meets in the evening. But we had 21 students who were participating in Al this year that Bruce and Eileen and Rex over in Salem led that class. And then I wanted to invite up Trinidad, who was helping out so many times on Sunday mornings with our faith development program for elementary, and sharing her gifts of art. So maybe just a round of applause. Thank you. And then we, or maybe I should have saved that, because we also have regular ongoing programming for adults, and I wanted to invite up both Gloria and Ruth. I think you're both here. Come on up. So the Wisdom Circle, which has been meeting, when did the Wisdom Circle start meeting? I don't even know. Years ago. Why don't you come everyone can kind of shift over. And Anne Principe, I think you're here. If you could come up, leading the mindfulness-based meditation practice group every morning. So incredible over Zoom. And in spirit, we're thanking Ron and Bonnie Fishman for leading our dialogue group twice a month. And I don't know how long that's been going on for either, so many years. Recognizing you all for your leadership and commitment to faith development and beyond, some of you for many years. Thank you for your gifts of time and love and all the unique wisdom that you've shared building community. So another round of applause, please. And I'll just name a couple other people. I don't want to, we don't need to call other people up, but Jackson Gatlin did some teaching this year for us with wilderness shelters and picture frames. Jeanette McGinn did some teaching for us and led us on the farm. Suzanne Chapman doing our Easter egg hunt again. John Benson leading bird walks. We had Regina Millis, Misha Gerson, and Clem all grouping to form the Art and Spirituality Workshop series that we've been doing. Thank you all so much. So we can have another round of applause for them. Thank you. And to all those that I didn't name and we hold in spirit. So many of you who taught and offered amazing leadership and creating community. So thank you, everyone, for building beloved community together. Guys, everyone can be seated. And I will sit down as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. The year wouldn't be complete if I also didn't thank, and I thank Jim. He's a really excellent clerk. I thanked him in the annual report, but I want to say that again today here. Looking forward to having Mary step in as our president. Really very confident that she's going to do a wonderful job. And then on a personal note, I want to thank a few people who I can call and text throughout the year for advice and support. And they're not here. Well, two of them are. But Michael Salona, Deb Boggs, Bruce Campbell, who's on a whole nother plane, and Reverend Vicky. So come on up, Reverend Vicky. I wanted to thank you on behalf of everybody at UUCGL for ministering to us. As I said in the annual report, whether there are 6 or 60 people here at worship, we know that you put in the same amount of work for every service, and we thank you for ministering to us throughout the year and throughout the seasons of our lives. You're welcome. So back to comments, discussion, questions from the floor. Anything? No. You're all ready to go home? I will now entertain a motion to adjourn. Thanks, Jack. Second? Second, okay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Firmly into the 21st century. So more thanks, and all my thanks to all of you. Thank you for your forbearance with me as your minister. Every annual meeting I like to say thank you for forgiving me, because not only do I hear about some things for which I need to be forgiven, I know there's a lot more I never hear about. So I know that's the case. So thank you. I mean it. I meant to keep this short. You know, that's not really my skill set. So I will end there, and I will say that the morning offering to support the ministries of this church and also the Eastern Massachusetts Abortion Fund will be most gratefully received.